Hi, I'm Miss Haley with the Huntsville-Madison County Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to finger knit. Finger knitting is super duper easy. It's a great way to get started knitting and a great way to get started using a loom particularly. It's a little bit different than knitting with needles. But for finger knitting, you're going to need a pair of scissors and some yarn. For finger knitting, I prefer a big weight of yarn. So this is a size 6. If you find on your yarn pack, you're looking for this. It's like a little yarn icon with a number on it. This is size 6, which means it is super bulky. So the bigger that number, the bigger the yarn that you're using. So this is considered super bulky yarn, as opposed to, say, something like this, which you'll see me use a lot in crafts. You look at this size, it is a size 4, which is medium. You really want bigger. Bigger is better with finger knitting because your fingers are pretty big. They create a big sort of weave to the piece, and if you have thick yarn, it covers that a little bit better, and so you're not going to see a bunch of holes. Whereas if you're using really thin yarn, you're going to have a piece that just looks like kind of a tangled mess of holes. It just doesn't look very good. So the thicker the yarn, the better. I definitely recommend a size 6. You can do size 7, which I think is considered jumbo, but that's up to you. And you're going to want to, I'm going to use this because I have almost a full skein here that's already unwrapped. But you're going to want to start by just unraveling a decent amount of yarn. We're not cutting anything off of our skein until we're done. So you're not cutting anything, you're working with that skein. So you're always going to be pulling more yarn off the skein. So you cut it off from the skein, you're not going to have anything to work with. You're going to run out eventually. So that confuses a lot of people sometimes when I start teaching them how to finger knit. They get very confused and they want to like measure out a certain amount and cut it off. But that is not how this works. Just don't do that. And generally speaking, anytime you're knitting or crocheting, you keep it attached to the skein. So to start out with, keep my skein in view here, you're going to just pull up a decent amount off the skein just so you have some slack. And you're going to take, your hand is going to be your loom. So you're going to take your hand and you're going to drape your tail, your end, over it, and you're going to hold that in place with your thumb. If you want to, you can even loop that around your thumb a couple times just so that you know it's not going anywhere. But that is just to kind of hold it in place. Then what you are going to do is you're going to take your yarn end, your yarn string piece, whatever you want to call that, and we're going to start wrapping it around our fingers. So we're going to come under the first finger. See how it's under? We're going to come over our middle finger, under our ring finger, over and around our pinky. So then we're going to come around from our pinky, over the ring finger, under the middle finger, and over and around the index finger. So that's one. We're going to do this one more time. So from around the middle finger or ring finger, we're going to come over, under, over, around, over, under, and then over. So when you're done, or when you get to this point, you're not done. We got a long way to go. You should have 2 loops on each finger, and that counts as a loop there. That's where we started. That's why it's so low. So you should have 2 loops on each finger. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. So now you can kind of let go of your yarn, let it just sit there. If you need to, you can pull it tight. You can pull here, pull on this one to keep it tight. That's one reason not to wrap it around your thumb, is that you have to unravel it to pull it. But if you're wrapped, it also stays tighter. So now we are going to pull this bottom loop over the top loop and off our finger. So we're going to come over, keeping that top loop on our finger, and just off. And then you can pull it tight with using your slack yarn. So again, over, and it helps to tuck your finger down, over the finger, all right, leaving that top loop on. So again, this one, It's going to come over like that. And this one over like that. And then you're going to push that down. You can do it like this. You can just kind of pull the loops down. I like to pull the loops down. I find that works better than doing it that way. One thing to keep in mind as you're building your knitting piece, it's going to look, well, right now it looks like nothing because we've only done one. It's going to look kind of wonky in the back for a little while until you start to get some length on it. Don't worry, you have not messed up. It just looks that way to start. And then also this one, most people's pinky finger is a decent amount shorter than the rest of their fingers. Mine is a lot of it shorter than the rest of my fingers. And if yours is really short like mine, you're going to have a problem with this loop wanting to slip off. And you don't want to lose your top loop when you're slipping off the others. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. But make sure you've always got the right amount of loop on your finger for the stage you need to be. So from here, that's how you start your finger knitting place. From here now we can just keep finger knitting. So it's the same thing over and over from this point on. So our thread right here is kind of between these two fingers. We're going to come over our middle finger. We're just going to ignore the pointer for now. Over our middle finger, under our ring, around our pinky, over the ring finger, under the middle finger, and around the index finger. So we're back at that same stage we were just at, where we have 2 loops on each finger. I'm going to let go of this one, and I'm going to start pulling over again. So again, we're going to pull this bottom one over this loop and off of the finger. And when you're doing this, this is the stage you need to be careful not to lose this loop here. I tend to lose this top loop when I'm pulling off my loops, and we don't want to do that. So over like that, you can adjust your loop down and pull it tight. I find that first one is pretty loose and I have to adjust it. So over, tuck your finger. Sometimes it helps to kind of tuck your finger through to help it over. And then this last one. All right, so now you should have 1 loop on each finger. You can push them down a little bit. You always want to push them down to give yourself room to work so you're not working at the very tips of your finger. If you're working at the very tips of your fingers, you're more likely to lose a loop accidentally. So then we're going to just do the same thing. So over our middle finger, under, over and around, over, under, over and around. And then we're just going to let that, it's really kind of sitting on top. And you can hold it in your hand if you like, but I just like to let it loose. And I just pull that over. Sometimes I pull my thumb up to hold that first one in place if I need to, and pull it tight. Not too tight. You don't want to cut off the circulation of your fingers. So it should be loose enough that you can easily pull these over. You're not having to strain or hurt yourself. If you're hurting yourself, if you're pulling it that tightly, loosen up a little bit. You don't need to be cutting off your skin or your circulation here. This is a very loose weave. So we're just pulling those bottom loops up and over the top ones and then pushing down. So we're going to repeat this just over and over and over again as it builds. And it's going to build on the back side of your hand. So if you turn your hand over, you'll see it starting to build. And it might be a little loose there just from this. And that's fine. You can tighten that later. As long as you keep a hold of your tail, you don't really have to worry about that being loose. You can always pull it tight later. And it's going to look like that. And it might look kind of wonky at first. You might look at it and think, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Ew. And that's okay. It's going to look a little weird. Now this is a really thin one, and we'll talk later about what you can actually use this for. You're not really going to be able to knit a scarf, or at least a thick scarf, with finger knitting, but we'll talk about what you can do with it in a bit. So I'm going to show you one more time, and then I'm going to speed my camera up. But so one more time, you're going to come over the middle finger, under the ring finger. I'm going to push that a little lower. I'm worried that'll pop off. Over and around the pinky, over the ring finger, under the middle finger, and over and around the index finger. You should always have either 1 loop if you've just over looped, or if you're weaving 2 loops on each finger. If you have one that has 3, you might want to reverse a little bit. So 2, I'm going to pull this over and tighten it. I'm going to pull this one over Pull this one over, and then I'm going to do my last one right there. Okay, so now I'm left with one loop on each finger. Tighten that one down. It's trying to slip off my finger. Push them down a little bit and start over. And you just do this over and over and over again. That's what weaving is, until we get to the end. And I'm going to speed up so that I can build up some length for our project here, and then I will slow back down and show you guys how to end your piece, how to get it off your fingers in a way that it's not just going to all come undone, because if you take it off now, you can just pull it apart. It'll completely unravel. So I will show you guys how to end it, and then I will also show you some ideas for how you can use this. All right? Okay, so I have some length built up, and as you guys can see, it's coming off the back of my hand. As that happens, you can, if it helps, depending on how long you're going, you can let go of your tail a little bit. Just make sure it doesn't get pulled so you don't like really scrunch it up and tie it, but it's not going to unravel or anything. So this is my length. You can tell I kind of have this sort of ladder shape in there. This is why you really want a chunky yarn. When we take this off, it's going to want to curl a little bit, and you'll see that ladder less. But this is why you want a chunky yarn. If you have a thin yarn, that's really, it just doesn't look good. So to get this off, I'm going to show you one more, we're going to go one more time, I think, on length. One thing, if you were watching, I don't know how well you could see it in the time lapse. There was one point where a loop came off my little finger. I caught it and I just twisted it back on. You just have to figure out how it was on there and twist it back right on and then come off. And the other thing I do is I'm always tightening after I come off the loop. I'm tightening right here so that I get a consistent finish here. Otherwise, this loop tends to be really, really loose. So I'm going to show you one more time, just over, under, over, around, over, under, over. I'm going to pull this loop up, pull this loop up, 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 push it down. And then you see how loose this one is. That's where I always make sure to just pull. I'm going to pull kind of off this way so that it's tight. So to finish this off, what you're going to do is you are going to take this loop from this finger off, and you're going to put it onto this finger, okay? And you can pull it tight if you need to, if it got really loose. Pull it a little tight. Not so tight you're choking your finger, just a little bit tight. So again, let me reverse that and show you one more time. I'm just taking this finger, this loop off and onto this finger. You're just plopping it over. And then we're going to take this bottom loop up and over and off the finger, just like we were when we were knitting, except we're reducing the number. So we're going to take this bottom loop, pull it over that top loop and off the finger. And then we're going to take this loop and we're going to move it to this finger. So we're going to take it off here and onto that finger. Okay. Same thing, we're going to pull this one up and over and off. Then we're going to move this loop to our little finger, pull that up and over and off, and now we're left with just one loop. Now what do we do with that loop? Well, it's really simple. Keep it on your finger for now, if you can. And this is where you need your scissors. The one and only time you need your scissors is you're going to cut off a tail. Go ahead and cut off a decent sized piece. Not so much that you're wasteful, but enough that you have some to work with. And you can set aside your yarn and your scissors. And go ahead and very gently take that loop off, hold it, make sure you don't lose it. You don't want to lose your loop. You're going to take this end, this thread end, and you're going to thread it through the loop. And you're just going to pull it really tight. And that is going to knot off the end. If you really, really, really want it to be secure, you can do another one. You can make a loop with your finger on the end here and pull through the thread, and just, you want to just force this knot, move it until it's just down with the other one. And that is how you end your piece. And then if for this end, you just want to pull it really tight. If you want it to still look a little similar, don't pull it too tight. And again, you're just going to put a knot on the end of this one, just so it's extra secure. You don't have to, but. So we're going to make a loop with our finger. Make sure you guys can see this. So a loop with my finger. And then whatever side is the back side there. And then I just hold this and I just kind of pull. I'm pulling the thread through with these fingers here so that the knot, I'm holding that knot down at the bottom so it's going to wind up there and not like right up here in the middle of my yarn. So you have a couple options. What do we do with this? You might be thinking it's 2 inches wide. What is this even good for? You can't make a scarf out of it. You could make a really long one that's long enough to be a scarf, but it's so thin. What kind of scarf is that? You could, if you have dolls, like American Girl dolls, this could be a scarf for a doll. I've used it for that before. You'd want it a little bit longer, but it makes a really cute scarf for a doll. You could turn it into a chunky bracelet. Mine's a little bit long for a chunky bracelet, but you can make it into a chunky bracelet. You want to make sure you can get it over, but this has a lot of stretch to it. If you pull on it very gently, it has a lot of stretch. So you could tie it off and make a chunky bracelet. If you plan to do that, I would do it from the start so you can measure your length. You want it to end and finish so that it looks like one piece. This is a little too long for that. I was making mine to be a headband. So you can take this and you can weave a headband through it if you've got one of those thin ones. You can all, because of this ladder shape, wait, where's my ladder shape? There's my ladder shape. So because of this sort of ladder shape, you can kind of just in and out, weave this onto a headband, and it looks super duper cute, especially right now for fall. You can also get one of those larger headbands if you've got like a chunkier headband, and you can spread this out. You can glue it down. You can tie it to it. A lot of different things you can do there. You can also use this as a necklace if you wanted to, and just tie it up here and have that be a chunky necklace. There's a lot of different things you can do with these. They're pretty versatile for finger knitting. So that's what you do. If you don't want your ends, so if you were using a bracelet, you would probably want these ends so that you could tie them and then you cut them off. Same thing probably if you're doing a necklace, probably not if you're doing a headband or a doll scarf. You don't really need these ends. So what do you do with them? So if you don't need your ends, what you're going to do is you're going to take them and you're actually going to weave them through a little bit. So you open up your yarn. It wants to curl in on itself, which is what I was talking about when I said you'll lose that ladder a little bit because it'll curl in on itself. So you just uncurl it a little bit, just very gently, open it back up and find these holes, and you're just gonna weave the tail through a couple times. Just pull it through there, come over here to this other one, just back and forth, going through a different hole each time, because if you go through the same hole, then you just undo what you just did, and that's silly. I don't want to do that. So you just weave it in a little ways, and then you're going to cut it off. Make sure when you cut it off that you don't cut off your actual, you don't cut through your actual piece, you're just cutting off that tail. And then you have a hidden tail. You can, however, if you want to, if you don't care to have it hidden, you can cut it off right here, but that little knot will show. So it looks a little bit more polished and finished if you do weave it through. So we're just going to take that, weave it through here. And you don't have to pull it super tight. You can just kind of loosely weave it through. If you pull it really tight, it might change the look of your knitted piece. So you don't have to do that. And I like to finish it on whatever side is going to be the underside. For me, the underside is always the side that is curled. So this is the top because it's not curling that direction. It's curling in like this, so that's the underside for me. And I like to finish on that underside because if I'm using it, say, for a headband, that'll be covered. It'll just be a little extra secure. And there is our knitted, finger knitted piece. Super easy. I hope you guys had fun with this. I would love to see your creations. I'm sure they're different than mine, just by virtue of you probably picked different colors than I did. I would love to see what you turn it into, whether you turn it into a bracelet or a doll scarf or a headband. I would love to see it. And you can send those to us at our Facebook page, which is Huntsville Madison County Public Library. And we would love to hear from you. Thank you guys.